The failure to act with sufficient ambition to avert the climate catastrophe will be the greatest moral failure of our time.
Making changes takes courage, and if we don't change things, we won't have a future.
I'm an environmentalist. A lot of people don't understand that. I think I know more about the environment than most people.
You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words. Change is coming, whether you like it or not.
Zero carbon.
East off. Hello and welcome to Zero Carbonista. I'm Ian Collins. The summer is over, well, more or less. The kids are back at school. The lockdown is in some kind of unfathomable state of flux, and we return with Series 2. It seems that in the time we've been away, merely a few weeks, the environmental agenda is busier than ever. We'll be tucking into that shortly. If you're listening to this podcast for the first time, here's an explainer. This series is essentially about the views, campaigns and thoughts of one man, Dale Vince, the entrepreneur and environmentalist. He built his success in the green energy sector. He's the owner of Ecotricity, the world's first green energy company. He also happens to be the chairman of Forest Green Rovers. And as you would expect on each episode, we bring you the dominating issues from the biggest agenda on the planet right now, the environment and climate change. And Dale, it's good to see you back. Have you spent the summer hanging in a hammock in Barbados? I think that's what your public need to know.
No, I've been here fairly busy. I mean, it's been kind of like the rest of lockdown, really, for me, just without podcasts to record. August has flown by. I dropped my youngest son off to school today for the first time and said to him 6 months has flown by, actually, because it was, since March that he's been there.
Yeah, of course.
But it feels like, the world's getting back to normality now. That's how it feels.
Indeed.
And yeah, as you say, there's a whole bunch of eco stuff going on.
Yeah, and I guess this takes us nicely into it.
When climate change kicks in, the level of disruption is going to be off the scale. I mean, if you think what we did on the tubes matters, I'm sorry to feel emotional about this. It was justified because we are actually, in the long run, trying to save people. What you've seen in terms of disruption is nothing.
These are the Extinction Rebellion protests, of course. Around about 5 or 6 days, I think, they've been going in the capital, about 500-600 arrests so far. Of course, that's part and parcel of the deal for many people who protest. I mean, we've been over this territory many times, of course, and the message that I think most of the people on those protests are trying to get out there is really rather simple.
Yeah, I love the quote in the clip. I love what's said there. I love the fact that these guys are back. And as I was writing my book, I don't want to over-mention that as a standing joke between me and my youngest son when we go on lockdown walks. We'll talk about stuff, Trump, what's happening in the world. And I'll say, oh, that's in my book. And he groans and eye rolls. But XR are in the book. I felt they were on the verge of a breakthrough before lockdown. They really cut through the message and particularly with the tactics. And I'm just saying in the book, I hope these guys come back. And here they are. So that's great.
Yeah. And in terms of getting that message across, Extinction Rebellion are known for peacefully protesting. There's no controversy in that sense, which I suppose feeds into the simplicity of what's being said here.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it is peaceful. It's very direct. They're not the only people that do stuff like that. Sea Shepherd are also peaceful and very direct. But, Extinction Rebellion have taken protest to another level. They're very strategic with it. It's very disruptive by design. And it's at a scale that we've just not seen before. For them, it's not enough just to march down the street shouting slogans. And I get that. They're right. They're actually out to disrupt life and say, look, we can't carry on as we are, and we won't allow it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I spoke this week, because Extinction Rebellion always talk about the cross-section of people that protest. And I interviewed a couple of Tories, what you would call, in many other respects, right-wing Tories, Brexit supporters, patriotic, flag-waving, save the last night at the prom songs, all of that. But we're also protesting with Extinction Rebellion.
And that's great, isn't it? Because, the climate crisis cuts across all demographics and all politics. And when you understand the real risk that we're facing, then I think, everybody can embrace it, including right-wing Tories. Even Donald Trump could if he got it. And that's the beauty of it. It is the biggest issue that we face that we have to deal with. It's way bigger than the virus crisis that we seem to be coming out the back end of, just for now anyway.
Yeah.
And if we don't grasp it, then it's all going to go very bad.
And of course, Trump knows more about it than most people, as he's told us many times.
Yeah, he said that once or twice, didn't he?
Yeah. Also, this story, sewage sludge containing human waste from the Netherlands has been passed for import to the UK. This is to be used on farmland as fertiliser, but huge concerns over the safety of its use. What are we making of this? I've never heard of such a thing.
I love it. I love it because, as I said on social media, Britain's not just in the toilet under 10 years of Tory rule. We've become the toilet of Europe. That's a shocker. And, it's so funny. This is Brexit we're talking about. This is taking back control. And all we're really doing is just taking shit from Europe in a different way.
By the bucket load, yeah.
Absolutely. We were the dirty man of Europe before we joined it about 40 years ago. And we hear our politicians, or even now, saying, well, we have the highest standards of this, that, and the other in the world, or Europe, or whatever. But the Dutch have higher standards of food production than we have, and they won't allow the sewage to be spread on their farmland. So
yeah, that's what I thought was interesting, is that it's actually banned in the Netherlands. So the Dutch obviously sat there and said, what are we going to do with all this shit? And someone said, send it to the UK. They love it.
And this is our great big trade opportunity, perhaps. We'll just take shit from Europe and spread it on good old Blighty. I mean, there's a lot to laugh about in this story, but of course there's a genuine human health risk. We have a sewage problem already with it being spread on farmland and leaking into our rivers, causing algae blooms and stuff. We have a genuine water pollution problem here already. We have enough crap of our own, I would say, to deal with. So this is all kinds of wrong.
What about this? This is down to what we eat. And I know one of the areas that you're really verbal about, Dale, is about food, transportation of food, etc., and anything that feeds kind of into that agenda. 100 million subsidised meals were eaten over since we've been away. This was the kind of eat out to help out scheme, where the Chancellor, of course, announced you can get 50% off or up to 10 quid per person or something on a meal. And the Treasury telling us it's been a huge success, but it came at a price.
Yeah, all kinds of wrong, this story. In August, we spent £500 million subsidising junk food, in essence, junk food, but fast food, eating out. And I just think it's wrong because only weeks before this was announced, the government had to be shamed into extending free school meals through the summer by Marcus Rashford and others. That was a total cost of 120 million just to give kids that can't otherwise afford to eat dinner. And then they go and launch this 500 million splurge of fast food discounts for people that not only can afford to eat, but can afford to eat out. There's been no help for people that are trying to feed their families, no discounts at supermarkets. There's been no help for people with energy bills. But if you can afford to eat out, the government are going to give you 50% off. Just all kinds of wrong. And £500 million in 1 month. Yeah. Oh, my God.
On burgers, which sits, one would have to reasonably say, slightly at odds with the anti-obesity message they're also trying to send out.
Yeah, just another contradiction from our dear old government.
Here's a question from Christopher on Facebook. Hello from Austria. Loving Zero Carbonista. Can I get a Forest Green shirt here, please?
Yeah, you absolutely can. We've got an online shop. If you go to the FGR website, yeah, you definitely can, Christopher.
Good work. On that note, let's stick with the footballing aspects of your life here, which I know is really dear to everything that you care about and everything that makes you function, I suppose, because it's quite encompassing, isn't it? It's not a sideline. This is something that, probably takes up as much of your time as running Ecotricity, I would guess.
It's certainly become a big part of my life, since we rescued Forest Green and turned it into a green football club and that kind of stuff.
Well, so on that point then, tell us, who is Hector?
Oh, yeah, Hector. Well, we had a great chat yesterday by Zoom, and I think we're publishing that shortly. Basically, Hector Bellerin plays for Arsenal in the Premiership. He's been vegan for a little while. He's got a bit of an eco agenda, and he reached out a few weeks ago, said, could he get involved in the club? Could he help out? He likes what we're doing and stuff, and he's just become our second biggest shareholder as of this week. And, happy days. He's a great guy. He was telling me in the chat we had, he actually came to play FGR 7 years ago. We had a pre-season friendly with Arsenal, and they brought their under-23s, and he hadn't broken through into the first.
Wow.
And he remembered coming out of London on a long bus journey to Forest Green thinking, where's this?
Let's have a listen to what he said.
A played a friendly 6-7 years ago against Forest Green Rovers in pre-season. Obviously, back then, I mean, I had only been in the UK for a couple of years, so the only thing I knew about them is like that they were really far from London, and that was a long coach journey. And then obviously I started seeing a lot of stuff in the media, and I remember like, I played against these guys, you know. Even at the time when I started hearing things, I wasn't even vegan then, or you know, I wasn't using my platform as I am today. When I went vegan myself, you know, I started like doing more stuff for the environment, and you know, I was reading all these things. I was like, I wanna meet these guys. I wanna help them if I can. Like, this is so good, not just for the environment, etc., but for football. You know, it's such a good example that there's so many people that feel that there is no solution for the problems that we have today. But you know, you have a team playing in one of the top 4 leagues in England. You know, they have to travel a lot. They have to eat healthy. They have to like do all these things. They have to keep their ground like, you know, looking clean at all times. And they're basically carbon neutral. And like, how is this possible? And then I started researching more into the subject, and you know, it got me to being here today. And obviously, like I told you before, like I'm so excited to be able to be a part of this family, and like, you know, help with like whatever I can, because I feel as humans we just need to like help the people that are changing the world for the better. And obviously, you know, if we can see Forest Green in the Prem in a few years, then even better for everyone.
The other thing I loved what he said was that he chose to go vegan about 3 years ago. He'd had some injury issues and he thought it might help him. And, you know, that is a fairly common path for people to take. But he said it seemed improbable because he didn't like vegetables. He was a big meat eater and he actually didn't like vegetables. And when he told his mother, she's like, but you don't like vegetables. How's that going to work?
How is this going to work? Well,
she's become a vegan and she's become a really big vegan advocate. Which fantastic.
He's made it work. Good work. This from Lee on Twitter. How are those solar parks coming along? Any news, Dale?
There is some news, actually. We had 2 that we were going to build this summer. And when lockdown came along and all that kind of disruption happened, we had to put it on hold. We hoped for next spring, and that looks probable now. And what we did in the downtime, we investigated some new aspects of solar, which we quite like the look of. So there's the thing called bifacial panels, which generate electricity on 2 sides of the solar panel, which is quite new, and trackers, which are not that new, but making them economic seems to be so. So we looked at adding trackers and bifacials to our 2 solar parks. Fortunately for us, one of them doubled in grid capacity in the lockdown. I don't know why, but instead of having 7 megawatts, we were suddenly offered 15. So we're going back into planning to extend that, add some trackers. They're a little bit taller than ground-based, and add bifacials. And so we're going to have bigger sun parks, but also more productive as well. And so it's kind of been a really productive delay for us. When we do build them next year, they'll be super modern, using some new technology and techniques, and bigger as well. So happy days. We should start work in the spring.
And also this new research suggests that power companies are dragging their feet when it comes to embracing green energy sources such as wind and the aforementioned solar. Only 1 in 10 energy suppliers globally have prioritized renewables over fossil fuels. You know, as somebody on the outside of this, Dale, I find this unfathomable. I sense my 6-year-old could explain the lack of sense in this to some of these companies. So what am I missing, or what are they missing?
Yeah, it's a job to know, isn't it? I mean, there's just too much business as usual going on in the world of energy companies. And the survey, what it did was these guys, they looked at the amount of money being spent by energy companies on fossil fuels versus renewable energy. And they found that most were still spending more on fossil fuels than they're spending on renewable energy. Even though spending on renewables has gone up, it hasn't yet reached the point where it's the dominant spending by most energy companies in the world. So we've got a way to go yet.
Yeah, wouldn't that be the number one thing on the agenda in any boardroom right now?
Yeah, you would think so. I would think so. But actually, usually number 1 on the agenda is making money. And right now, I think these companies have got a lot invested in fossil fuels. They can still make money from fossil fuels as a business they know and understand. And so we've got some way to go.
Is it as simple as that? Is it just the balance books? They look at this and say, okay, we know there are alternatives, but in the meantime, we're trying to keep shareholders happy here. We're trying to make sure our company remains buoyant. We don't want to go into uncharted waters just yet. So this is something we're familiar with, so we'll just carry on doing it.
Yeah, totally. It is exactly about that. It is all about making money. That's the conventional business model. And they can see that they need to change. But of course, they want to take plenty of time about making that change. So as well. Politicians as well talk about 2050 as the time by which we reach net zero. I mean, 30 years from now, that's far too long. We can make the transition faster if they want to, but they currently don't want to. They want to take the time about it.
Gotcha. Sharon on Facebook says, are you doing any live events for your book? For those who don't know, and if you listen to this podcast regularly, you would know there is a book. So what's the status of the book? I know it's finished. Is it out there? Is it on the shelves?
No, I thought it was finished a month ago, but I don't know anything about writing a book. So then we spent August doing some copy edits and tweaks and adding some photographs. And it's finally finished like this week, finished, ready to go to the printers. Publication date is 27th of November. And I think we're going to go for a launch around about the middle of November and start doing some virtual and maybe some real world book events as well, because, real world might be back by then. It's on the Forest Green website at the moment, so you can buy it, pre-order. We've got a very special story in the final chapter. We're going to break that one in the middle of October anyway. I think we're going to launch the idea. It's something we've been working on for a long time. There's a lot to say about it that I can't say right now, but it is finished and you can pre-order and it is coming.
It's out there and it's called?
It's called, I miss all the basics, don't I? It's called Manifesto.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, it's who's not going to buy a book called Manifesto?
I've really enjoyed writing it because chapter 13 is Manifesto, and it is this. It's how we get to zero carbon, and it's brutally simple and so doable. We have the technology, it's economic, everything about it is right. There are some policy suggestions in there, but it's not dry, it's not complicated, and I like it because it really just sets out what we need to do. So and I hope it has an impact.
And just, without going into the details of what the specifics of the manifesto, but what is it that, one would assume that our Westminster masters sitting there in Downing Street and the various government departments around Whitehall would be, I'm guessing they will be aware of the kind of thing that you've written but they'll be aware of the kind of suggestions and policy ideas. What is it that stops governments implementing something that I know you'll say is really simple? Why do you think they don't just say, okay, well, Dale knows what he's talking about. This is in his DNA. He runs an entire company that is based around all of this. What do you see that they don't, and why don't they see it?
I don't think they see a simple or clear route to do this. And it's probably because I've spent the last 20 odd years pursuing this kind of stuff. And the manifesto itself is a distillation of all of that. It's rooted in what's doable, the technology that's here or coming very soon. It's rooted in economics as well as the climate drivers and stuff like that. I think it's because I've lived it for a couple of decades. I've done it in all of these sectors, energy, transport and food. And because that's the single focus of my life, whereas your average politician, particularly, let's say in today's government, their heads are all over the place, aren't they? Yeah. And, the climate is one of those boxes they need to tick. They need to say the right things and reassure the population that they get it and they're going to do something about it, by 2050. So I think it's a matter of priority as well. If they tackled it with the same kind of focus that we tackled lockdown, let's say, or not Don Cummings, obviously, because he didn't focus on that very well at all, then I think we could make immense progress. In the next 10 years, we could do incredible things. So it really is about focus and priorities and having a clear vision of what needs to be done, because actually the benefits of doing it far outweigh the benefits of not doing it from an economic point of view. Yeah. It's not something that's going to cost us to do, it's something that's going to benefit us.
Sure. And cost us to not do, I suppose. You could look at it that way too.
That's right. I mean, it's a massive economic opportunity. We need to rebuild our economy. We've got the chance to build a green one. And, it will fundamentally change everything if we do this, or when we do this, I should say. I think the only question is when we finally get around to it, and the sooner the better.
I think you should apologise, actually, to Dominic Cummings. Do you not know he's had trouble with his eyes?
Yes.
I mean, talk about kick a man when he's down, Dale. Come on.
Yeah, quite. Yeah, I'll leave him alone.
Final one from Danny on Twitter. You did touch on some of this. I've missed the podcast lots. Did you do anything on your month off?
Yeah, not so much. Not so much different to what I normally do. Lots of work. We've got some big stories breaking next week, actually, we've been working on for quite a while. But yeah, no, just more of the same. Getting ready for football to come back as well. That's been quite busy in August. Generally enjoying myself. We're building a couple of new websites, a new app for Forest Green, all sorts of stuff. Busy as hell, really.
Nice.
Just not recording podcasts, and I'm glad to be back doing it, I should say, because I enjoy this.
It's great, and I get loads of listeners on air contact me about it as well. So it's we are back, we are up and running, and we can't say too much on this episode, but there's going to be, following this episode, there'll be a sort of a mini podcast released as well later in the week. So more on that to come. Dale, we'll speak to you on the next one.
Fab, looking forward to it.
And that's it for this one. Don't forget, of course, you can subscribe for free from your podcast provider so that you get each new episode automatically. Make sure you leave a review too. Really important bit, make sure you follow Dale on social media. That's twitter.com/DaleVince or facebook.com/DaleVince.
Zero carbon.
East of.